turns out hindsight, much like the year we're all now desperately looking forward to, is 2020.
You'll be sorry!
I finished my Company Fails miniseries, I said that I'd be tackling any major fails that happened over the course of this year. Well, boy, did 2020 deliver! But before we get into the meat and potatoes of this year, how about a quick recap? Hit it! Stadia, train wreck, Yakuza, what the heck? ESD is a player and a tournament with chance. Mortal Kombat Aftermath, Bethesda breaks its DRM. 7.6 just had a bug that steals your guns and pants. Take-Two kills the theory, Australia sues Sony. That's essential business, Ubisoft abuses brought to light. Epic Games broke the rules, so they banned Fortnite. Choices are always for you. And despite the feeling, they just keep retreating. Blizzard screwed up Warcraft 3 and doesn't pay their employees. Laughed the fuck up badly, cause crunch was quite a scare. Yonder dev speed run, get this bands away my fun. DOA, pay for hair, give it back for profit share. WWE, crash from 2K20. Zero Lab is all it all, the 505 is for control. Pokemon by 10 cent, 3D All-Stars Limited. Oh no! Fails to us all before you. Lots of pure defiance from the demon giants. Choices are always for you. And despite the feeling, you just keep retreating. Avengers was a corporate mess. Critics just were not impressed. EA to game was ads, interrupting all your games. Colin Lord just thinks you pay if you play more than once a day. Progress group and publishers, Konami. Oh, we really need to say anything? Seriously, they're trying to get people to hate them. CDP had some crunch, all the glitches, yes a bunch. Amazon could crucible and Sega crunches prototype. Scalping of the PS5, Microsoft can stop combine. EA sold a FIFA twice, if you was gonna buy it. Fails to us all before you. Lots of pure defiance from the demon giants. Choices are always for you. And despite the feeling, you just keep retreating. As the current year has been difficult for game development to progress, it's inevitable that some companies will have to cut corners while still finding ways to please the fans, something Nintendo is struggling with. Ever since Reggie stepped down from the office, Nintendo's starting to take a lot more shady directions with their business practices. The first sign of all of this is with Mario 3D All-Stars, Nintendo's love letter to their nostalgic fans. At first, getting a package of 3 beloved 3D platformers from the Mario legacy seems like a wonderful way to celebrate the franchise's anniversary. Sure, they're a little overpriced for re-releases that don't really have any mechanical or visual update, but who's to argue with getting to play these games the way they are as long as they work? Looking at you, Konami! Well, there's still a problem, and it's really bad.
Hey!
You are free to eat.
Am I?
Are you?
That's right! If you want this collection, you better get it fast because Nintendo's pulling them back in a few months' time. Yeah, you know, these 3 games that are over a decade old and probably duplicated and pirated everywhere. They finally answered fan demands by offering legal releases again, but only for a short while. How is this a good business practice? You legally own the data for all 3 of these games, so what's wrong with producing copies of them regularly as long as they turn a profit?
This is neither the first nor the last time they did this, by the way. The anniversary edition of Zelda 4 Swords got the same treatment 9 years back, and they did it again with the original Fire Emblem just a month ago. I get that limited releases can help boost sales demands for a period of time, but in the long term, all it does is paint a sour image on Nintendo's marketing. Oh, but that's the mild part. As the holiday seasons were coming to a close, Nintendo's behavior grew more and more erratic. You know how amazing it is when people respect the culture of gaming by coming together to play the games and sharing their experiences about the many aspects they enjoy? Something tells me that Nintendo forgot about all that when they unleash a mass lawsuit towards the big house for sponsoring Melee tournaments. Why? Because they were using mods. Yep. This again.
Bunch of weird, dorky stuff that ruined my perfectly good stuff.
Combating this act of monarchy, fans began hosting the Squid House, featuring a Splatoon 2 tournament offering prizes beyond what Nintendo could in their usual events. You know you goop pretty bad when fans had to be extra charitable just to call you out. It seems like instead of learning to better themselves, Nintendo's taking a bunch of backward steps because their lawyer said it makes them the big bucks. I know you think what you're doing here is the right thing, Nintendo, but is it really worth harming your public reputation? Just because you want to be like Disney doesn't mean you have to be Disney.
And on the topic of repeating mistakes, it's like this enterprise is run by a villain or something. Did you guys hear a leak?
When something gets leaked, depending on what it is, it's cool for the consumer for a little bit. Getting even the tiniest look into what a developer is working on is tantalizing, and if it's cool, it can be really exciting. But let's be honest, it isn't so great for the developer. It could ruin sales strategies, lower stock, and if the leak is a bad thing, it could lead to negative press. At the beginning of the year, we got a big leak with Last of Us Part 2. Yeah, the game had already gone gold, but it kept getting delayed before Cyberpunk made getting delayed into a meme.
The game's already been delayed twice, they said. It's a big open world.
We got fresh cutscenes and gameplay, but it seemed that it spoiled huge story points of the game, and the backlash from it wasn't the best, even from die-hard fans of the first game. At least it got a lot of awards. Seriously, Ghost of Tsushima was robbed. Just a month or so ago, Capcom had a huge leak showing off many of its future projects, including new Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, and Street Fighter games. Not only revealing that they're coming out with these new games, but release windows and the systems they're coming out on. While this is cool news for consumers and hype as heck, Capcom is seriously going to be reeling from this one for a bit. And of course, we got the big leak of the year, one so big it got its own Wikipedia page. Nintendo's leak, one that has released decades of behind-the-scenes data and info regarding the development of many of its games. It is insane how much data was released, but there was a lot of questioning regarding the source of the information. Was it true? Was it legal? Well, it definitely wasn't legal. After all, Nintendo's one of the most secretive companies out there. The last thing they want is any of their info to be leaked in any way. But it's insane that it happened. Leaks aren't anything new for the industry, but the amount of info we got from just the last two showed off everything from Nintendo's past to Capcom's future. Both things I know they would want to keep private. And we've had plenty of other leaks from Bandai Namco, Atlas, Sega, and others. But the fact that it happens so often is in itself a fail.
Well, at least we did get 8 leaks from Steam.
Honey, I found the dripping! There's a leaky valve.
Irony, thou art a heartless bitch.
Yeah, there's no way around this. I can't talk about 2020 without talking about the sickly elephant in the room. The human malware, Winnie the Flu, Pinko Pox, whatever you want to call it that doesn't get me demonetized. With everyone's health at risk, only certain businesses were deemed essential to keep open, such as grocery stores, pharmacies, hospitals, Gamestop, and... Wait, what?
One of these things is not like the others.
GameStop! GameStop is an essential business. Yeah, apparently in early March, GameStop tried to justify keeping their stores open despite lockdown orders. Their best argument is that they want to help those staying and or working at home, because apparently these don't exist. How convenient, considering that so many people under lockdown will be playing video games more than ever, and that GameStop's been at a steady decline over the last few... See that? It's so paper thin, I can't even finish the joke! Okay. Maybe I'm being too cynical, and maybe they really were just trying to be helpful, but you can't deny how sketchy it looks. GameStop's basically been on life support for a while. Even the Reginator couldn't save them. Then suddenly the commie cough comes around. People are ordered to stay home and only essential businesses would remain open. Not too long after, in comes sneaky old Mr. GameStop to take advantage of the situation, therefore inadvertently putting their own customers' health at risk as well as their own staff members.
Okay guys, real talk here. I love video games, but they are not worth jeopardizing your health over. Go digital right now. It's a lot safer in these times.
As you can imagine, this didn't sit well with anyone. So, GameStop caved and closed their stores, with only a select few offering curbside pickup and home delivery. Okay, that's a decent compromise. A lot of food joints do that and it's perfectly safe. You know, maybe we won't see GameStop goofing up twice in 1 year. Why can't I be proven right for once? So, in early November, GameStop held a TikTok dance contest for their employees. One of the prizes? Getting to work extra hours during Black Friday week. Yes, they were essentially making their poor, underpaid workers dance for their right to afford to eat during what is basically Hell Week for all retail workers in the middle of the Karen cough breakout. It's safe to say that the present outbreaks brought out the worst in a lot of people, and now GameStop is one of them. So desperate to try and redeem their reputation that they'd stoop to taking advantage of the situation and their own workers. At this point, it feels like they're just begging us to pull the plug on them and put them out of their misery. And I can't help but think it might be for the best.
Hey, did you know that Amazon has a game studio? Neither did I!
And by Amazon, I mean the place that gets drones to deliver your socks. Yes, that Amazon. They have a game studio. A few, in fact. Over the last couple years, they spent a crap ton of money trying to be the next big thing in gaming by buying talent and technology to create their own money-printing video games. But instead of creating games based off of creativity or originality, their philosophy is we throw money at it and we get more money back. Amazon, how are you that rich and yet you suck at capitalism that hard? I can go into a lot of detail about the entirety of Amazon's gaming initiative as it's a super large fail on its own, but since they haven't completely given up on being a game developer, and I don't want this one entry being as long as my top characters list, we'll talk about their most recent fail, Crucible. Crucible is Amazon's answer to multiplayer shooters in the same line as TF2 or Overwatch, but with some battle royale elements similar to PUBG. And like a lot of Amazon's games, Crucible went through development hell, despite it being playable as early as 2018 according to some reports. Because Amazon wanted it to be a billion-dollar franchise, they continued development until they had to release the game in beta in early 2020. The problem with that is that once Crucible came out, the Battle Royale scene practically died out, with only Fortnite and Call of Duty still dominating. Combine that with the game releasing while it's practically half finished and with most of the features like Twitch integrations not being made, this is like the Heroes of the Storm of Battle Royale. Then, in a decision that really shocked people, Amazon unreleased the game less than a month later. Okay, well, that's not entirely true. They put it back into closed beta, but that wasn't the end. In October, Amazon canceled Crucible completely. It wasn't that surprising since the game has been gasping for air since it was first announced, but it seems Amazon decided to pull the plug and focus all their efforts on other projects. Their other projects being the MMO New World, slated for release next year, after being delayed twice, and Pac-Man Live! Woo! Okay, well, ignoring Pac-Man Live for a bit, I can go over a lot of Amazon's tremulous journey through the game development scape over the last 10 years, but considering Crucible was Amazon's first ever gaming release, and it was botched this hard, I think we could get by with this.
Oh, I know you all were waiting for this one.
Back when I did Nintendo fails, I made a bit of a comment when I realized that Blizzard royally screwed up Warcraft 3 Reforged and how annoyed I was that they did it right after I released the fails for them. So yeah, you can thank Warcraft 3 Reforged for this list existing. That's a good thing, right? So what was so bad about Warcraft 3 Reforged? How about a combination of lying and downgrading a game that was fine and continued to be played by hundreds of people to this day? Let me elaborate. In 2018, when the game was announced, it had a lot of potential. Upscaled environments and animations, updated models, and an upgraded user interface and world editor. But if you follow interviews in the years that follow, things didn't seem well, and the original plan altered heavily from what was shown in 2018. And when we actually got the game, well, I'll be charitable and say it could have been better. Probably couldn't have been worse though. The newer models and textures that were promised were there, but nothing was done more than the occasional mild texture change or newer character model. While the game has been upscaled to 4K, the rest of the game looked like it did back in 2002. It didn't help that there were frame rate issues too. Then we get to the worst parts. For one, a lot of the features that were in the original game were taken out by the end. Clans, tournaments, wired and offline play, and ranked play were all missing. Their excuse was some of these features weren't that popular and won't be coming back. Okay, Blizzard, stop taking cues from YouTube! But what really hurts it is that the original game was being updated to the new version. So it screws over all the players who lived by the classic game and would prevent them from having some of these features ever again. Honestly, Blizzard has done a lot of crappy things recently, and this doesn't even compare to some of the higher entries on Blizzard fails. But by continuing to keep doing things like this, Blizzard loses our respect more and more. Eventually, all their fans are just gonna give them the cold shoulder.
Honey, I thought we were done with the ice puns after ice bosses!
Whether you love the MCU like me, or are desperately praying for the end of it, also me, it's impossible to ignore how massive it's become. It's repeatedly broken records, brought several once obscure actors and characters into the mainstream, has every kind of merchandise you could imagine, has led to other studios trying shared universes, with mixed results. With the Marvel Cinematic Universe being such a successful franchise, you'd think a game based on it would practically print money, right? I mean, the Marvel Ultimate Alliance games are looked back on with fond memories. Should be easy, right? Well, given that we're talking about fails, you can probably guess the answer for yourself.
It doesn't.
First teased nearly 4 years ago, Marvel's Avengers would be missing in action until Square Enix's E3 of 2019, where it was finally revealed in full. So, how did Avengers screw up? Let us count the ways. No local co-op in a game where you play as one of the most iconic superhero teams of all time, making Spider-Man, one of the most beloved Marvel characters, exclusive to the PS4 and 5 version, and then not having him playable at launch. Having said launch feel like a glorified public beta with all the bugs when there already was a public beta. Having weak, repetitive gameplay that largely consists of just doing the same mission types repeatedly. And last but not least, a live service model that locks out all the stuff people would actually want to get behind a paywall. There's really no excuse for Avengers to be in this state in this day and age. Good superhero games are very much a thing nowadays. The Batman Arkham series, Injustice, and Spider-Man have repeatedly proven it. The difference with those is that they knew just having a recognizable name attached to it wasn't enough, and that they needed good gameplay to back it up. As a result of all these issues, Avengers' player base has been steadily dwindling and has cost Square Enix tens of millions due to the lack of sales. So, one question remains. Can Avengers turn it around and pull a Round Reborn or a Taken King? Well, to be brutally honest, I don't see that happening. Now, don't get me wrong, I am a die-hard MCU fanboy. Civil War is one of my all-time favorite movies, and I've cosplayed Captain America. With that said, one thing that people don't really acknowledge is that stuff like A Realm Reborn can only happen due to good leadership. Naoki Yoshida knew that just patching Final Fantasy XIV a whole bunch of times wasn't the answer, and that the game was flawed on a fundamental level.
There's no saving it. We need to pull it out by the roots.
So, unless one of the key staff members on Avengers gets replaced, or someone in the higher-ups gets a Buddha-level epiphany, I don't see a comeback happening. In the end, we can only hope that the game serves as yet another example to publishers that the live service gravy train ain't all it's cracked up to be.
Unfortunately, that just isn't the world we live in.
It's sad. And funny.
Ooh, another Blizzard entry. Get the crock pots ready, because this is about to be a roast!
Even after everything you put the world through, people still held hope for you, Blizzard. Well, at least those who weren't working for you anyway. What goes on within the building, on the other hand, is colder than any storm they can blow. Following the massive job cut in 2018, there has recently been news articulating a revolt by staff members over at Blizzard Entertainment. Since 2019, they had it rough working under abysmal pay for months, despite Blizzard's standard profits and budgeting. They even passed a spreadsheet showing the average pay of every staff position. While producers and engineers get to make over $100K a year, the standard employee at Blizzard hardly accumulated $60K a year. The pay is so underwhelming that staff members had to split earnings just to compensate for each other's lack of benefits. Some of them even had to skip meals and cancel household plans just to conserve money. Meanwhile, the CEO casually banks himself $40 million worth of profit, and the chief financial officer gets to keep a sign-in bonus of up to $15 million stock reward. So while they're swimming in all those bills, the people who had to shatter their backs all day made not even 1% of what they got.
I thought you said it was a fortune. It is a fortune.
At this rate, the fired staff might as well be the lucky ones. Even after their cut, Blizzard still couldn't offer fair treatment to employees that stuck around, despite having all the resources to do so. So instead of spending those millions on improving staff management and quality of life, they funked off to Disneyland.
At least they'll have enough dough to see the doctor later.
Let's all be brutally honest with ourselves for a moment. Gaming ain't cheap. Whether you're a kid desperately trying to convince your parents to get you that sweet new game console, or you're an adult with expenses to cover, it's an expensive hobby. This is especially true if you're the kind of person who wants to build a top-of-the-line gaming PC. With this in mind, it's not hard to see why Google Stadia was conceived. I mean, let's be fair, they're not the first person to have this idea. A huge library of games playable on your TV or smart device for a small monthly fee? What could possibly go wrong?
All of it.
Let's get one thing out of the way first. Yes, Stadia was released at the tail end of 2019. With that being said, it's had many fails throughout this year, so the way I see it, it counts. Anyways, Stadia somehow managed to accomplish the task of shooting itself in the foot and then proceeding to bury itself. It would honestly be easier to list the things that went right with it. There ain't a lot. With a lack of exclusives, input delay on an online-only console, leaks, giving away pro subscriptions because it was doing so badly, the list never ends. Stadia had one of the worst launches I have ever seen of a console. And as terrible as stuff like the 3DO and Gizmondo were, at least they actually worked. But maybe it's not so bleak. After all, there have been consoles that have recovered from lackluster launches. Just look at the PS3, Xbox 360, and Xbox One. Of course, the only reason they were dead on arrival is that both Sony and Microsoft had established consumer bases, and Google isn't quite known for gaming. So with Stadia, I think it's only a matter of time before it goes the way of Google's other innovations.
Google Wave, what happened?
We killed it.
Google Glass, what happened?
We killed it.
Google Car.
No, this is gonna be amazing, eh?
Warning. The following entry deals with some very heartbreaking and disgusting revelations. If you don't want to see, skip ahead to this time. Remember back in 2019 when I said that Ubisoft was more incompetent than evil?
I never felt that they were actively evil, unlike some other companies.
Well, turns out 1 year later, once again, I'm eating my own words because we got word about some terrible, horrible allegations that have been going on for years. You know how in recent years, a lot of employees, especially in the gaming business, are finally coming clean about abuses they faced in their occupations? Unfortunately, Ubisoft has been found guilty of playing host to such abuses, and even enabling them. Several executives and VPs have faced accusations of sexual harassment and misconduct. They tell their female employees that they should smile more, make lewd comments about their bodies, and all that other gross stuff you should have grown out of after puberty. Apparently, they've even had meetings at strip clubs of all places. Worst of all, they've gone so far as to use their power to intimidate and even assault their coworkers, sometimes by choking. And what does Ubisoft do about this?
Oh, I see nothing. I was not here. I did not even get up this morning.
Nothing. They did nothing. Actually, they did worse than nothing. They willfully looked the other way and did whatever they could to cover up the allegations and fail. They're more interested in protecting their inner circle and pushing their products instead of taking responsibility for their literally gross negligence. Now, there is a time and place to separate a product from their creators, but not when you're deliberately trying to draw attention from an issue. The real kicker, this has been going on for a decade. Thankfully, this was the year that people were finally made aware of the misconduct and several of the abusers have departed the company. May they never find work again. Hopefully, Ubisoft can start taking the baby steps to clean up their act, but it's going to take a while to wipe the stain off their reputation. And if by next year, we hear this behavior continuing, they'll never hear the end of it. Oh, Electronic Arts. When it comes to disappointing, you never disappoint. It's no surprise that EA would find a way to mess up this year of all years. They've jammed their feet in their mouths so many times they got double-jointed knees. So what could they have done this time? Let's see. They wrongfully smeared someone for rightfully calling out one of their workers, snuck in unnecessary ads, copy-pasted FIFA 19 for the Switch. Oh, and the pièce de résistance.
I'm gonna sue! Yes, I'm gonna sue!
Yep. EA faced not one, not two, but 3 class action lawsuits, and all 3 revolve around the same theme: loot boxes. Because it could take a lot of real money for a chance to get a good virtual item, loot boxes have been under strict gambling regulations in some countries. Of course, that's never stopped EA before. You know as well as I do how much they thrive for a chance to grab that extra cash by any means necessary. You know, aside from making a good game. Shots fired! Unfortunately for them, this came back to bite them thrice. The first was in August, where California threw the law book at EA for their ultimate team packs in the FIFA series, calling them predatory and dependent on the gamer's addictive behavior. Now, for all the foreigners that don't know, gambling laws are a bit looser in the States, so there's not much one can do compared to, say, living in Canada. Oh wait. Yep, 2 months later in October, Canada hit them with another suit for the same reason, but for all their games. This one wasn't covered that much in the media, but it's the internet. It always finds a way. Also want to briefly mention one situation with the Netherlands. They didn't sue EA, even though they'd have every right to, but they did fine the company for 10 million euros over the FIFA loot boxes. EA's trying to appeal the ruling, because heaven forbid EA ever admit they messed up. And not even a month later in November, lawsuit number 3. This time back in the States again. The suit claims that EA has been using their dynamic difficulty adjustment tech, which basically gives them free reign to change the difficulty of a game on the fly, to trick players into buying more loot boxes in hopes of getting further ahead. So they're pulling an Activision now? And yet, despite all this trouble that loot boxes cause for them, you know EA isn't gonna give them up anytime soon. They are basically the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. They'll say they had no intention of causing all this gambling drama, but with their history, how are we ever supposed to believe them? Even in 2020, when things are unpredictable and uncertain, EA couldn't even try an attempt to put their money mongering on hold, and now they paid the price for it. So, wait, does that still make these litigation issues a fail or a karmic justice? Yeah, tomato, tomato.
I'm the Fiery Joker, and if there's going to be more big-time fails in 2021, which, given the state of the industry right now, is a pretty safe bet, we're going to be doing this again next year. Same time, same place. Until then, have a safe and happy new year. And to 2020, I only have one word for you.
Cut!
Hey everyone, this is Josh. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video around. Please check out my other social media like my Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr. Check out my other channels such as Joshua Burner for reactions and other stuff, Dragon Fighter Gaming for tabletop, and Bob Equestria for cartoons. Consider checking below the video and donating to my Patreon, Streamlabs for my merchandise, or becoming a YouTube member, and you'll get rewards like this. Our name shoutouts come from Misty Phantom. Thanks for watching.